Adriana had a birthday recently. Thank goodness for Facebook reminding everyone of everything. So let's go to statement 14 of chapter 3. Yeah? So here people claim that for those who take the training, benefit will arise if they guard the rules, but this is not the case for others who have not taken the training. Yeah, so the general view is, if you take up the training, meaning you make the promise, oh, I'm going to keep this now. And then you say, oh, I'm going to keep this now. Then you train. Then benefit will arise. But as for those who never said, oh, I'm going to take this, then it doesn't apply to them. So here Kyopa Rinpoche says, no, that's not how you should, that's not correct understanding. He says, benefit will indeed arise through guarding the rules. Yes, when you guard, when you observe those rules, observe the guidelines that the Buddha provided, then any being within the sixth realm will definitely benefit. Any being within the six realms would definitely benefit. I think sometimes, I admit even, I feel, oh, wow, so what this means is like, for example, if a tiger says, somehow makes the decision, I'm not going to kill today. I mean, as if tigers can make that decision, but let's imagine that. Then Kyopa Rinpoche says, actually, that's good for the tiger. If the tiger is able to make that, today I'm not going to kill. Even though we say, it's in the tiger's nature to kill, right? But for Kyopa Rinpoche, he says, then there is negative karma, even if it is in the nature, even if biologically a tiger cannot survive, right? Without killing or without eating meat. Yeah. It doesn't mean that, killing is permissible. Tigers can kill, but human beings cannot kill. It's not like that. This point is a little bit hard sometimes, I would admit, at least for me. Yeah? But then when I really try to understand more deeply what Kyopa Rinpoche is saying, he's not judging, okay, by the way. This is when I say you are oversensitive. He's not judging the tiger and say, oh, bad. Yeah, he's not judging the tigers. He's just pointing out, the nature of samsara is so, right, tricky. So then, as human beings, that's why it's said, we have a very special position within the six realms. As human beings, we have a very special position where we can make decisions relatively free from the confines of how, like our bodies, we have relatively more control over our bodies, and our minds compared to the other beings in the six realms. And therefore, it's so important that we do not squander away, we do not waste, right, this precious life that we have and spend it fighting over, stressing over, quarreling over meaningless things. Even if, habitually, because of our habits, we can't help it, right? Sometimes. But at least if we can, quickly recognize and go, that's really stupid. I'm not going to, yeah, put more energy into that. It's pointless. Then, it's good. So anyway, here it says, like benefit will arise through guarding the guidelines that the Buddha provided by any of the beings of the six realms. So Chodra Drigunda Makiti says, for any of the beings of the six realms, benefit will arise through guarding the basis of the training, consisting of the rules established by the Sugata, by the Buddha. There are many stories, such as that of the potter, Gatikara, who abandoned digging the earth with his hands, and the arising of happiness and welfare for the king of Kashi and his retinue, because the four great beings in the forest of Kashi kept the lifelong discipline. Moreover, to briefly summarize, in the Subahu Tantra, it says, of all the pure discipline conducts, the Vinaya rules of the Pratimoksha taught by me, the victorious one, the lay mantrin abandons the signs and rituals of ordination, but must practice the ones that remain. The path of liberation from the evil propensities, the Dharma that is correctly taught by the Sugata, provides purity and liberation. So Chodra purposely, I think, quotes Vajrayana text, the Subahu Tantra. So the Subahu Tantra says, he says, as for the Vinaya rules given to the monks and nuns, right? He said, it says here, even though for the lay mantrin, meaning the lay practitioner who practices Vajrayana, even though the lay Vajrayana practitioner abandon the signs and rituals of monastic ordination. So it's saying, even though the lay Vajrayana practitioner, by lay here, it's not talking about like, sometimes do, sometimes don't do. This lay mantrin is actually talking about very advanced practitioners who, for whatever reason, they are not ordained as monks and nuns. So he says, for those, although they do not have the signs, that means they do not at all times wear the robes. And they have not taken the ordination formally. But other than those two aspects, all the other aspects taught in the Vinaya Pratimoksha for monks and nuns, you should keep. You should observe. So it says, but must practice the ones that remain. So other than the explicit rules, right, of like wearing the robes at all times, eating out of a monk's begging bowl, and right, the rituals of ordination. Other than that, all the other things that the Buddha said to the monks and nuns, this is good to practice, this is good to avoid, all that applies. Still applies, regardless of whether you have taken the training or not. Thus, if householders, while avoiding the signs, the garbs, and the rituals of ordination, guard the 253 rules, it is said that they too achieve the greatest benefit. The however part, let's leave that alone first, because it's unclear what it is saying. However, some say that any transgression that occurs for the ordained ones similarly occurs for beings from householder to the hell being. And then dot, 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 dot. So some other lines cut out. Even the higher realms will not arise for them. He says, until this line, it is completely incompatible with and above, with the above quote from the Subahu Tantra. Here he is quoting, he's quoting Sakya Pandita. Sakya Pandita says, some say that any transgression that occurs for the ordained ones similarly occurs for beings from householder to hell being. This some say is talking about Drigung, talking about Kyopa Rinpoche. Well, I guess I can explain it. Here, Chodra is basically saying this contradicts what Subahu Tantra says. Subahu Tantra says it applies to everyone. Yeah, and then the last line: even the higher realms will not arise for them. So Sakya Pandita actually said, anyone, right, who has not formally taken this, even if they practice them, it won't produce results. Yeah. Now, don't ask me why Sakya Pandita said that, okay? Because I don't know Sakya Pandita's system. But here, Chodra says, well, that kind of thinking, here it contradicts what we see in the Subahu Tantra. And I think, to be fair, right, you can say, there are so many different quotes that one could find to justify what you want to say. I think, to be fair, you can say that, especially now everything is searchable on the computer, using the computer. You can search for another quote to say another thing. So again, here, our studying of the Gongchik is not for the purposes of saying, I'm right and you're wrong. Right? Our purposes of studying Gongchik in the end, at least for me, is devotion to, for whatever reason, hard to explain, devotion to Kyoba Rinpoche's way of seeing things. And wanting to benefit and to understand from the way he looks at things. And take that as a way to guide the way I'm going to practice. For me, simply for that, As to whether, I think Kyoba Rinpoche is the best, that one I can't say, Obviously the best for me, because I feel this way. Might not be the best for everyone. For sure it's not the best for everyone, because everyone's karmic connection is different. But for me, this is a very clear, very clear and consistent way, and very helpful. So we have to find, a system that is most helpful for us, and then we have to practice. Be careful not to find a system that is very good for us, or we think is good for us, and get stuck in quarreling or disputing others. Careful not to do that. So the example of Gatikara, Sobish has researched this to find out what is this story. So on the top of page 277, according to the Majjhima Nikaya, the potter Gatikara was a layman who, among many other observances, such as taking only one meal per day and not touching gold or silver, like the fully ordained monks, had abandoned digging in the earth, which pleased Buddha Kashyapa and greatly benefited Gatikara. So this is talking about a story of this one layperson. He's a potter. And when he heard that the Buddha told the monks, Don't eat, after, just take one meal, simplify, and don't touch gold or silver, meaning get involved in financial money. And also don't dig the earth. So then he also observed that, even though he wasn't a monk. And he correspondingly also benefited from that kind of training. Then you ask, what is this business about digging the earth? And Buddha gave the fully ordained monks and nuns, that you should not dig the earth because it disturbs. It involves, killing. So don't do that. There's also a well-known story of the arising of happiness and welfare for the king of Kashi and his retinue, because the four great beings in the forest of Kashi guarded the lifelong discipline. These four great beings are the grus, the bird who became the Buddha, a rabbit, a hare, a monkey, Mogayayana, and the elephant. So these are the Buddha and his chief disciples. And this is the story of the four harmonious friends. Usually painted, the elephant, standing on top of the elephant is the monkey. On the shoulder of the monkey is the rabbit. On top of the rabbit is the bird. This is a story about the four of them living in harmony with each other. But the story also tells of how each of them were trying to determine who is the most senior. It turns out the bird is the most senior. And that's all due to a tree. The elephant said, oh, when I was around, the tree was only this tall. And then the monkey said, oh, when I was around, the tree is only like this. And then they're like, oh, since the monkey is smaller in height than the elephant, monkey must have been around for longer. Then the rabbit even longer. And finally, the bird, which is Buddha Shakyamuni, he said, actually, I pooped there. And from his poop, the seed for this tree was planted, and the tree grew. And they're like, oh, the bird is the most senior. But here it also tells us that, but they live together in harmony, practicing not killing, not stealing, not engaging in sexual misconduct, not telling lies, and not holding wrong views. And as a reason of that, it says the whole region remained free from disease. Its beings live long lives, their wealth increase, and they enjoy good harvest. And when a clairvoyant rishi told the king about the benefits arising from such disciplined conduct, the king and his retinue, they all followed the example. And so it is said that their practice of disciplined conduct was so fruitful that it affected the whole region. Just these four creatures affected the whole region. So whoever practices these virtues, whoever you are, it will naturally bring benefit. That is the bottom line in this statement. 315. Transgression of the rules by any being of the six realms is an occurrence of fault. So, as I said, 14 and 15 are like two sides of the same coin. 14 is saying, whoever keeps them, benefit will come. Doesn't matter you have taken formally the vow or not, benefit will come. 15 is saying, now whoever breaks them, whoever does engage in unskillful actions, then problems, then negative vipaka, undesirable vipaka will come. Vipaka, result, outcome. Karma, action. Vipaka, outcome. Right? So parallel to the previous Vajra statement, transgression of the rules by any being of the six realms is also an occurrence of fault. And then quoting this one text, it says that in the first eon, The rice that needed no cultivation declined due to hoarding. The 500 non-Buddhist rishis did not obtain the 5 supernatural perceptions because they held surplus materials. And the householder lost his adornments because he said unpleasant things to the 2 oxen. There are such stories, and this Vajra statement is established by the quotations and reasoning of the preceding Vajra statement. So even here, Choda says, it's basically the same logic as the last statement, looking at it from the other side. So this reference to how in the first eon is talking about at the beginning of our world cycle, it is said that grains grow naturally without needing human beings to plant them, apparently. But it grew so much that humans started to hoard them. And it says that as a result of their hoarding, that kind of grain stopped producing naturally. So then human beings have to start unnatural agriculture. So it's saying that there was a point where there was just natural agriculture. Nobody need to plant them, and it was enough for everyone. But when people start to hoard, then not enough for anyone. Including, it says, there were these rishis, these ascetics, these sages in the early period where no Buddha Dharma was present. But they were practicing meditation and practicing simple living and all of that. Then, supernatural powers, perception arose. But when they started to hoard, it also created obstacles from them having those realizations. So Dorshema explained the person who lost his adornments because he said unpleasant things to his 2 oxen. It says in the Dorshema, it says, the householder lost 500 coins because he gave his 2 oxen derogatory names, namely soft horn and broken stubby tail. After he gave them pleasant names, he obtained 1,000 coins. It might sound like kind of, fairy tale, but the point is, even towards something like oxen, which in this case, these oxen are not pets, right? They're more like work animals. They're almost like you can say also your car. Oxen will pull things and move things. So when when that person called them by insulting names, then negative results arose. So elsewhere in the Bodhisattva training, they say, a Bodhisattva understands that even cursing at a burnt out stump will produce negative results. A burnt out stump, first of all, stump, useless, generally speaking. A stump, a tree stump. If anything, after cutting a tree, right, it's a nuisance because now if you don't dig out the stump, right, there's a chance that that tree will revive, and then now you have to cut it again. Yeah? But so some people, to prevent the stump from growing, they burn it. So now completely useless, right? But a bodhisattva understands that if there is anger directed at even at a burnt out stump, negative results will definitely come. So how much more, if anger is directed at sentient being, then directed at our parents, directed at Buddhas, at our teachers, even more negative. So 14 and 15 are 2 sides of that same point. 16, there were some who held that it is sufficient to guard the rules without having been introduced to the ordination ritual. So here is extending, it's addressing a point that says, now, even though it is said that with or without the ritual, if you observe the training, benefit will come. If you don't observe the training, harm will still come. Even having said that, it is also not the case that you should not think, oh, therefore the ritual doesn't matter. Here it says, no, we maintain that the ritual is most important for the teachings. Also don't, on the basis of the other statements, come to the conclusion, oh, therefore it doesn't matter whether you have the proper ordination or not. It says, no, it's also important. In fact, very important. When it says very important for the teachings, it has the connotation of, like, for the longevity of the teachings, for the continued availability of these teachings for others, it is important that we do not neglect the formality, the formal trainings that the Buddha has compassionately given us. And so it's also saying that. Yeah. So the commentary. If because of Vajra statements such as 3.6 and 3.7 and 3.10, you think that it is sufficient to guard the rules without the ritual, you may be correct. However, if you're seriously engaged in the teachings, the ritual is most important. So he says, yes, you may be correct. Chodron says, right? On the basis of previous statements to think, oh, ritual is not so important. Then he says, but if you are going to seriously engage in the teachings, then don't downplay the importance of the formal taking of the vows. So a text says, Buddha Dharma Sangha, the three jewels, Upadaya, which is the preceptor, Acharya, which is the instructor, one who wants ordination, the person who wants to be ordained, articles, meaning like the robes, upper robe, lower robe, and overrobe, the begging bowl. So these are articles that one needs to live the life of a monk. Freedom from obstacles, meaning if you are freedom from obstacles means you are free to make that choice. If you have been married before, your spouse has released you from the marriage. If you owe debt, and those debts are settled. So these are some of the requirements before you can become monk or nun. If you have been married before, you need your spouse to release you. If you owe people money, you have to settle those debts. If the government or the king is after you, you have to settle that court case. If you are not yet achieving the age that where your community says you can make your own decision, then your parents have to give you, allow you. So that's the meaning of from obstacles. Request, meaning you have to request, and actions. Meaning now going through the whole ordination ritual. So all of these have to come together. Therefore, right? Thus it is taught that 10 presences are necessary. And furthermore, the Upali Paripricha Sutra teaches that whether the teachings are established as existing or not is determined by the presence or absence of the ritual. Moreover, the authoritative text says, after I enter into parinirvana, you must rely on the perfect ritual. Here, perfect ritual, right? It's not talking about, getting all It's not talking about ritual in general. It's talking about the proper procedure of receiving the vows in this context. So the Buddha says, you have to pay attention to that. Because if that deteriorate, right, then the proper way of receiving the vows would deteriorate, then the people will forget the importance of training in the vows. So for the sake of the longevity of the Dharma, it is good to go through the formal way of receiving the vows. There are many reasons for relying on rituals, such as that the two accumulations are completed thereby, that which is accepted and rejected according to the ritual tradition is known, and that by taking the vows in the presence of Buddha images, in the presence of the upadaya, which is the preceptor, the one that actually gives the vows, and acharya, the one that then instructs you. So upadaya is the Sanskrit for the Tibetan kempo. The original meaning of kempo is the one who gives monastic vows, upadaya. So in an ordination ritual, you need both an upadaya and an acharya. Acharya is the one that, especially in the context of the ritual, he's the one that leads you. It's like the master of ceremonies in this context. So you also need the master of ceremony that move the ceremony along and knows the ins and outs of the ceremony, and also acharya in the sense of training you in the vows, preparing you before that, how to put on the robes, you have to shave your head, all those things. And then during the procedure, and then after the procedure, how to kind of carry yourself, how to live this new life. That's the acharya's job in the context of a monastic ordination. Then together with the sangha, meaning you also need witnesses beyond the upadaya and the acharya. Shame means, shame and embarrassment is known. So meaning like, if you have publicly taken these vows, right, then your own internal kind of concerns about shame and embarrassment is an added layer of you not acting outside the boundaries of the vows. So it says that is also part of why we should do this proper taking of the vows. The Exalted One taught in the Pratimoksha Sutra that we should appoint the Pratimoksha as the teacher. So Buddha says, after my passing into nirvana, this will be your teacher. This is referring to the Vinaya Pratimoksha. Moreover, there are a great many reasons why the ritual is needed, such as that the guarding mind that is a pure motivation occurs undistractedly through meticulously binding it with the three changes: the changing of sign and garb, the changing of motivation, and the changing of name. So for a monk ordination, changing of sign and garb, the changing sign is to shave the head, especially in Indian society. The three higher castes, they shave all, but they leave one tuft of hair, like one braid of hair, to show that they are the three higher castes for the men. But here, when you become a monk, even that tuft, you shave off. In a way, it's saying, I don't follow anymore these worldly standards of who is better than who. Gone, right? So for a monk, you have to change that. And the sign, now you no longer wear like secular clothes. You wear the clothing of someone who has gone forth. Then you have to change your motivation. That's inside. And you also change your name. You get a new name. So even in the uh, refuge vows, right, this also happens. Right? I'm sure all of you remember. So you come up and a little bit symbolically is cut, and often is cut from that same place that Brahmins will keep, a big tuft. So cut there. Then you change appearance. Then you change name. You're given a Dharma name. Then, most importantly, you change your motivation. So here, Chodra is basically saying, when you follow these meticulously, then you train your mind. This is part of mindfulness training. Furthermore, it is clear from the story in the Shurangama Sutra, in which the Buddha explained how to cultivate the resolve so that the evil Mara becomes free from its chains. Such a meaning has already been clearly taught by the great Lord Drigungpa. However, some monks who think of themselves as upadayas who uphold the Vinaya carelessly forego the 10 presences and deem themselves adequate without having to gather 10 members of the Sangha. Here, the 10 presences are talking about 10 witnesses. So here, Chodra is criticizing. He says, there are now some of these preceptors who give vows, and they think, oh, it's okay, we don't need the 10 presences. Chodra is criticizing that. They mainly try to acquire the title of an elder upadaya by shameless approximation without carefully carrying out the pratimoksha practices, such as the actions of the 4 requests. These people are upadayas who confer the vows by simply saying, I have conferred the pratimoksha vows. So he's talking about there are some upadayas, some monastic preceptors who think that they are, who kind of want to show, I'm a very advanced Kempo. So I don't need to follow these kind of rules literally. In any case, they're not important, right? So he says there are people like that, and this is wrong. He says, don't do this. Similarly, there are some disciples of Upadayas who saying, I've obtained the vows, are aspiring to the name without feeling the need to guard the vows. Such people are completely corrupting the rituals. Well, he says, don't do that. In Sobish's notes, he goes through the 10 presences. What are the 10 things that have to be present for a proper ordination of monks and nuns to take place? You can extend this to, the other kind of rituals that we practice. Of course, again, without getting obsessive about these rituals, and treat them like, they are like magical things, like some kind of witchcraft, Understand that the Buddha gave and the lineage masters gave these as ways for us to focus our mind. I said during the Sang practice teaching, I said that in the end, this is a practice of paying attention. So we can relate to, if we relate to all the different details of the practice. So last year, around this time, there was the opportunity, the conditions were there for the Guatemala Sangha together with the Mexican Sangha meeting in Guatemala, right? We spent 3 days on learning the proper ways of using Vajra, bell, Damaru, Bumpa, right? Y'all remember that? Those of you who were there? Yeah. So that's a good thing to do. Not because, so much that inherently, if you don't do this, you cannot be enlightened or awake. And not for that reason, but for the reason of, since you're going to be practicing in this tradition, you want to learn. But don't learn it as if you don't do this, bad things will happen to you. Learn it and understand that these are ways of paying attention. Of paying attention. Sobish talks about the three changes. So the changing in motivation, changing in signs, and changing name. 4 reasons for why taking vow through a ritual is more profound. So Doja Sherab gives those 4 reasons. In the beginning of the ritual, one accumulates merit by making offerings and showing respect for the 3 jewels and the upadaya and the acharya. One turns away from non-virtuous states and the pure motivation arises in one's mental continuum. So that's one reason. Supported by the 6 special material implements, the 3 robes, the water sieve, the begging bowl, the sitting mat, and the tangsham, part of the robes, a pure motivation arises in one's mental continuum. So here is talking about, when you have all these articles, together, your mind, is uplifted. You kind of appreciate, right, the seriousness of this occasion. So in that way, right, a pure motivation, you're inspired. So that's also a reason why we want to pay attention whenever we have a ritual event. Now, I've said before in the past, like I think at the Guatemala retreat, I said, if we're not going to pay attention, if we're not going to be sincere in preparing for a practice, in setting up the shrine, in preparing and all of that, if we're not going to be paying attention, if we're not going to be sincere with devotion, then don't do it. What's the point? Buddhists don't need it, Buddhists are not like your house pets, If you don't put out the bowl of water, they will suffer and die. No, they don't need this. So what's the point of doing it if it doesn't refine our intentions? Think of it as a way to refine our intentions. And don't think of it the other way around, which is, I think this is when we think of it as, unless I feel this way, I'm not going to do it. I know, at least in the US, some people have that thought, If it is not done sincerely, I'm not going to do it. Here, if we only think of that, which is true in one context, but also understand that by doing it, it can refine your sincerity. So if you wake up one morning and said, I don't feel like doing it because I'm not inspired, the way to go is not to say, okay, therefore I'm not going to do it. I'm going to wait until I'm inspired. Well, if that's the approach you take, you will never be free from confusion, right? So instead, you're like, wake up, I don't feel like doing it. Then that's when you go, but I'm going to do it, because in doing it, I can refine my feelings. If our Dharma practice is based on, I feel inspired, then I'm going to do it. I'm not inspired now, so I'm going to take a break. It's different from, I'm exhausted, I need to take a break. Then I'm not inspired, so I'm going to take a break. If I'm not inspired, I'm going to take a break. That's samsara working. That's how samsara perpetuates itself. But I'm really exhausted, and if I force it, I'm going to break it. Then, of course, that's different. Including like our class, it's okay, okay, so to say, right? Who am I to say it's okay or not okay? At least for myself, it's like sometimes it's like, oh, really exhausted, right? So some days I also say, oh, let's not have class, For me, I have to announce to you because, if I don't announce to you, you all turn up, I'm not there. That's terrible, For you, not necessarily you need to announce to me, unless you're noticing a pattern arising. Oh, I don't want to attend. In fact, I even hate attending. Then maybe you should talk to me, and maybe I can help figure out what the heck is going on. But otherwise, just understand, don't just like have, this is wrong approach, not helpful to your training to always think, only when I'm inspired, I'm going to do it. Then finish, Finish for two reasons, One, that means you don't understand how samsara works. Two, you'll be chasing inspiration. More inspired. Then you are practicing under influence. PUI, not DUI. PUI. Then your practice will never be stable. It will always be facing the ups and downs. That's the nature of samsara, ups and down, ups and down. And then if you're going to go along with samsara, then of course you go along with samsara. To practice is to swim upstream. So swimming upstream, as I use the analogy, is not easy. Sometimes you have to hide in one corner of this stream to rest a little bit. Because if you force yourself swimming upstream more, you might die. So sometimes you have to hide in some rock and just catch your breath. That's completely understandable because you're looking at the big picture. But the other attitude, which is, oh, it's easier to swim with the flow. Okay, then gone, Then for every yard, for every foot that you swim upstream, you go back 3 feet. Then you wait for inspiration. Then you go up 2 feet. Then you'll be pulled back 5 feet. Then you wait for an inspiration bigger than the last one that took you 2 feet. And then you go up 5. And now you pull back 10. And on and on and on and on. No end. After one lifetime, if you're lucky, more or less you're still in the same place. If you're not lucky, further downstream. Don't do that. So it's 11 o'clock. Let's see, any questions or comments? Your thoughts? Oh, so, Georgia Sherab has 2 more, sorry. Supported by special objects, the 10 presences, the pure motivation arises in the mental continuum as a blessing of the inner mind by outer appearances. To be blessed on the inner level by the outer appearance. And if I understand it correctly, one's conduct of body and speech follows the mental resolve of the recited formulas. Here, if I understand it correctly, what is this it? It is talking about when you understand the words that are being said, then you follow, your body and speech will follow. the mental resolve that is expressed in the words that are used during the ritual. So these are 4 reasons that Doja Sherab gives. Questions or comments? We have 2 more statements, then we're finished with this chapter. Then we go on to the training of the bodhisattvas. No questions? No comments? Good. Happy Monday. Tomorrow night there is that short series, the 3rd class for it, the 3 aspects of the path, 3 principal aspects of the path. And you can listen on Facebook. You can participate on Zoom. I will forward you that Zoom information. It starts New York time, 8 p.m. New York time, 8 p.m. So, Chanju Sem Rinpoche Ma Ge Ba Nam Ge 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 Ba Nyam Pa Me Pa Yang Gong Ne Gong Du Pe War Shu. Okay. Ta-ta. Be good. Be healthy.
Gracias.
Don't cause
Bye. Bye-bye.
Good night.
Bye.